Discover the hidden truth, why 90% of people struggle with your incredible success. Inspiration. In the heart of Maplewood, a small Midwestern town with golden sunsets and dusty roads, Sarah faced an uphill battle. She had spent years pouring her heart into teaching, reaching out to the local youth, finding potential in every student who walked through her classroom doors. She dreamed of creating a community center to provide after-school tutoring, a safe place where kids could learn, play, and grow. Yet, the world around her felt cold and dismissive. Foolish, some called it, while others shrugged her off as an idealist lost in dreams. As she walked through the town square, her pulse raced when she spotted Mark. Once her childhood friend, he now flashed his designer watch and expensive haircut, a stark reminder of the path they had chosen. Every encounter felt like a jab to her idealism, like someone was chipping away at her spirit. And he made it clear, his wealth was a game-changer in their society. To him, her goals were ridiculous, out of touch. Did he really believe making dollars was more important than making a difference? But one rainy afternoon, as she huddled over her plans at the local cafe, a group of veterans approached her. "We believe in what you're trying to do," one spoke, his voice strong despite his age. The elderly residents who'd seen hard times rallied behind her, sharing stories of their own struggles. Their hope warmed her heart. She realized they understood her dream, it meant something. But just when she felt bolstered, disaster struck. The only grocery store in town shut its doors. Panic spread like wildfire. Families who were already struggling faced hunger. The divide between those with means and the less fortunate grew wider. Sarah felt the weight of the world press down on her as she contemplated her community's plight. It was a personal tragedy but also a call to action. Determined to keep her dream alive, she organized a fundraiser. Stacking pamphlets, practicing her speech, wrangling volunteers, it was exhausting, yet exhilarating. Still, Mark's disapproval loomed like a storm cloud overhead. Was he using his influence to squelch her efforts? This wasn't just a fundraiser, it was a battle for her community's soul, a fight against the growing indifference she sensed from him. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As families began to gather for the fundraiser, the tension crackled. Mark stood at the back, arms crossed, a wall of his own making, while Sarah stepped on stage, her heart thundering against her ribcage. She spoke not just for herself but for everyone who believed in change. The murmur of the crowd swelled, igniting a wave of energy. Yet, Mark's smirk cut through her courage. In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of their history, their shared childhood, flash before her. What if there was more to Mark's motivations? A chill crept down her spine, reminding her that sometimes the hardest battles came from within. Time seemed to freeze, eyes turned toward her, whispers rose, and she realized the stakes had never been higher. Would she be able to pull her community together against the rising tide of indifference? What would it take to show them that hope was worth fighting for? As shadows danced around her, hers and Mark's, she braced herself for whatever lay ahead, ready to make her stand. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, a mix of hope and uncertainty swirling in the air. Sarah's heart raced as she stood on stage, the eyes of the community fixed on her. Families filled the seats, their faces illuminated by the flickering lights overhead. She took a deep breath and tried to find her footing. She had imagined this moment countless times, yet nothing could prepare her for the reality of speaking to people who needed what she hoped to create. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice slightly trembling. "This isn't just a fundraiser, it's a lifeline for Maplewood. We're at a crossroads and we need each other." The crowd nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling through the seats. Just a few feet away, Mark shifted uncomfortably. His arms still crossed, but for the first time, Sarah saw uncertainty peeking through his bravado. Every single contribution, no matter how small, can change lives. Some of you know what it's like to struggle. You understand that kids can only dream big if they have a safe place to land, somewhere to learn. She could feel the warmth of their connectedness, pulling her in as she poured out her heart. As she spoke, images of her students drifted through her mind, their bright eyes filled with potential. Laughter bounced through her classroom, the walls reverberating with the joy they shared. But then her thoughts turned dark. What if it was all in vain? What if everyone was right, and her dreams were too grand? The doubt seeped in like cold water, and she fought it back. Her voice gained strength. We can lift each other, fight for our community. We can be the change. Tears glimmered in her eyes, the raw emotion of the moment overwhelming her. She scanned the audience and locked eyes with a mother holding her child tightly, the woman's gaze fierce with determination. That connection fueled her passion. We can't give up, she exclaimed, voice rising. Together, we can make this happen. But I need your help. We need to raise money for this center. Let us do it together, Maplewood. As if propelled by an unseen force, applause erupted. Families cheered, children clapped, and even the elderly veterans nodded proudly. Their spirit surged through her like a kite rising in the wind. But just as joy filled the room, the familiar weight of dread crashed down again. Mark's smirk had faded into an expression she couldn't quite place. Was he calculating his next move? The sense of danger lurked in the back of her mind, hovering like a shadow, and then, as if to break the spell of hope, he shifted, uncrossing his arms. The crowd grew quiet, a collective breath held as everyone turned to him. Sarah, are you really sure this is the approach you want to take? His voice was loud, assertive, drawing everyone in a stark contrast to the warmth she had just ignited. The murmurs began again, uncertainty creeping in like a fog. Sarah felt her heart thump painfully against her chest. Did he really think he could undermine her passion? But what if he had a point? What did she know about running a community center? It was a risk, one that could either uplift or crash like a house of cards. Wait. I believe in every word, shouted one of the veterans, breaking the tense silence. The momentum picked up again, but Sarah could feel the tension rising, a barrier forming in the air between her vision and reality. What would it take for Mark to see beyond his own success? Did he truly want to make a difference, or was he content to remain in the shadows? That question gnawed at her. As the crowd rallied back in support of her, Sarah faced the situation head-on, knowing she had to rise above the noise. But the struggle was only beginning. Would she find a way to turn Mark's skepticism into support? Or was this just the beginning of a greater conflict that would test her dream of hope at every turn? The night was still young, and beneath the surface, unseen battles brewed. The tension crackled in the air as Sarah eyed Mark, trying to read the emotions behind his guarded expression. She saw the flicker of doubt that clashed with his confidence. It was a fight between her vision and his skepticism, and she had to win this battle. She took a step forward, gripping the podium firmly, trying to channel the fiery energy of the crowd back to her. Mark! She called out, her voice steadying. What do you mean by that? Don't you see how much we need this center? It's not just about a building, it's about giving our kids a real shot at their dreams. A few heads nodded in agreement, but others still looked unsure. She needed clarity and strength, something that came straight from her heart. Mark sighed. I'm not doubting your heart, Sarah. But change takes more than passion. He gestured to the crowd, his brows drawn. We need a solid plan and the right resources. Can you really guarantee that? The laughter and clapping faded as his words hung in the air. Doubt seeped in again, causing familiar knots in Sarah's stomach. Could she really promise success? Yet, she couldn't let fear dictate this moment. She took a deep breath and imagined her students again, their laughter, the glimmer in their eyes, the imaginations they brought to life every day. She couldn't forget why she was fighting. Look, she said, her tone earnest. I don't have all the answers right now, but together, we can figure it out. This isn't just me standing here. Look around. We are a community that shares a vision. We can raise the funds, we can strategize. We can make this happen. We can learn and adapt, but it has to start with belief. Some people around her began to nod again, murmuring support. The warmth crept back into the room, but Mark remained unmoved, calculating everything like a tough poker player. The crowd buzzed with reactions, excited whispers and shouts for support mixing with the uncertainty. She caught the eye of the same mother from earlier. Their connection ignited a flicker of hope inside Sarah. Remember why we're here. Our kids deserve a safe place to grow, to laugh, to learn. It's worth the risk. With every sentence, Sarah felt the swell of camaraderie rise like a tide, washing away the doubts, if only for a moment. Besides, she continued, how can we build a brighter future if we don't risk a little darkness first? If we don't step into the unknown? The crowd erupted with applause again, rekindling the flame of hope. She spotted a few smiles breaking through the tension, faces lighting up with that newfound determination. Then she turned back to Mark, remaining steadfast in her resolve. I won't back down, Mark. Not now. Would he soften? Could her passion truly convince him? The lingering shadow of doubt didn't stand a chance against her growing momentum, but she sensed that he wasn't finished yet. This wasn't a simple disagreement, it was a clash of ideals. Mark leaned in, eyes narrowing slightly. Okay, but what happens when it all falls apart? What then? Do you just pick up the pieces and start over? In that moment, silence enveloped the auditorium again as those questions reverberated. Sarah felt the weight of his words like chains around her heart. What if she had to face failure? What if her dream crumbled before it even had a chance to take flight? Something in her stirred a flicker of certainty rising from the depths of doubt. You know what? She said, her voice somehow clear above the murmurs. Sometimes, falling is part of the journey. If we don't take the risk, we'll never know how high we can soar. And with that, she stepped back, her eyes firmly on Mark, waiting to see how he would respond. The air was thick with anticipation both for her next words and Mark's response. Would he join her in this mission, or would he double down and walk away? A stillness settled, the room holding its breath, tension blending with hope. What was about to unfold could tip the scales either way, and the night grew more charged with every moment. Would Mark understand the true power of hope, or would he remain an obstacle in her path? Mark stood there, arms crossed, the lines on his forehead deepening. The crowd's energy, once electric and vibrant, now danced uncertainly around them. It was as if a powerful storm brewed on one side, while a brave new world emerged on the other, and which way the wind would blow remained to be seen. Sarah, he said slowly, choosing his words with care, it's not just about passion and dreams. Where's the data? The proof that this can work? You can't expect people to invest in ideas alone. They need evidence. The murmurs from the audience shifted, curiosity mixed with apprehension. People shifted in their seats, their expressions caught between admiration for Sarah's bravery and concern for her ability to deliver. Sarah noticed the crack in optimism, and it broke her heart. I'll get that proof, Mark, she blurted out, a spark of desperation igniting her voice. Just, give me a chance. I can gather everyone, collect stories, data, all of it. We can create something tangible. But will that be enough? He pressed, tilting his head, eyes sharp with skepticism. What if the stories you gather aren't enough to convince? The room fell silent. In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of every unshed tear, every doubt that had crept in over the years. And then it hit her, the time spent talking about plans, the hopes raised and dashed. Without even realizing it, she saw a glimmer of truth emerge from the depths of her worry. Maybe you're right. The admission felt like a weight lifted, but also like a new, heavier weight dragging at her feet. Maybe I can't promise you success. I can't guarantee that we won't hit roadblocks. A mix of astonishment and confusion spread across the audience. This wasn't the confident Sarah they knew. But I can promise you this, she continued, building momentum again, her heart quickening. I can guarantee that we'll show up for our kids day in and day out. That we'll lift each other up. I believe in this community. And even if we stumble, even if we fail, we will learn, together. Something shifted. A ripple of agreement began to rise, small at first, as the crowd started whispering among themselves. Mark's expression softened marginally, just a crack. Learning from failure is still a part of success, and we can't lose sight of that, Sarah said, her voice finding its rhythm once more. If we aren't willing to try even when it's scary, then we might as well give up on our dreams. As she finished, a wave of applause swept through the audience, stronger than the last. It felt like warmth flooding over her. It brought fire back to her veins. The crowd was remembering, too, remembering why they were here. Not just to hear her speak, but to ignite hope for their children. Mark raised an eyebrow. And when it all seems pointless? When the failures eclipse everything? I forget the past, she replied, her voice firm and unwavering, and instead focus on the stories yet to unfold. The applause grew until the clap of hands echoed in a cacophony of support. The room felt alive, and for the first time, Sarah felt rooted in possibility. Mark seemed to recognize it too, a spark of contemplation flitting through his eyes, but then, he spoke again, and the tension shifted back. What if the world isn't ready for this change? What if we're pushing too hard, too fast? The question struck like lightning, sparking questions in Sarah's mind. Were they moving too quickly? Could they truly handle the journey ahead? With the atmosphere still electric, Sarah caught her breath, gathering her thoughts. The weight of the decision loomed larger than ever. Were they prepared to steer into the storm or retreat to safety? The potential for failure loomed just as large as the hope for success, and it all came to a head. As she stood facing Mark and the audience, she felt her heart racing not just in fear, but in excitement. This was at the moment that could define everything. Could they take that step together into the unknown? The air thickened with expectation, both questions and answers intertwined, creating a swirling vortex of possibility. Would they choose to embrace their vision, or would they falter in the uncertainty? The weight of their willingness to risk began to shimmer in Sarah's heart. The question hung there, pregnant with possibility and urgency. What would their next move be? The applause began to die down, but an undercurrent of tension still buzzed in the air. Sarah could feel the weight of all those eyes on her, faces eager yet uncertain. Each person held their own hopes, fears, and stories. This wasn't just about her, it was about them. With new courage swelling within her, she took a step toward the crowd. I want us to think big, she said, projecting her voice. But we need to be realistic. Dreams without action can't take flight. Mark studied her, and in those searching moments, she felt a flicker of renewed determination. If she could harness this energy, maybe they could pull through. How many of you have felt hopeless at one point or another? Like your dreams were a million miles away? Hands began rising, a slow wave of validation. She continued, and how many of you have worked day in and day out, only to face setbacks? Have any of you felt alone in that struggle? The murmurs began again, shared nods, knowing glances. It was a storm gathering, but she wanted it to turn towards something positive. Together, we've lost so much. But together, we can also build something extraordinary. Let us collect our stories. Let us gather every heartache, every triumph. We'll create a mosaic of our experiences and use it as proof. Mark shifted his stance, arms now dropping to his sides. He was absorbing it, perhaps for the first time. And what if it falls apart? He asked, this time genuinely curious rather than antagonistic. Sarah stepped closer, vulnerability seeping into her voice. Then we'll pick up the pieces. We'll learn what went wrong. The lessons might be painful, but they will be ours. A journey together, no doubt, paved with moments of doubt, laughter, and tears. The audience was engaged now, some leaning in to listen more closely, others whispering to one another, fueled by a growing sense of unity. Imagine a world where our children don't just survive but thrive. A world where a community lifts each other up. Her heart raced. Could she ignite that fire? Mark raised an eyebrow, still skeptical but intrigued. What about the data to back it up? Will we even have time to gather it? Let us not dismiss the power of our voice. Each of us has a story that counts, Sarah responded, firm and passionate. We can start right now with each of your experiences. The data can be gathered, and I'll make it happen. As the ambience shifted, a woman in the front row stood and spoke. I just lost my job. I haven't been able to find anything in months. But you're right. I can use my story to help someone else. Another voice joined in, an elderly man, voice trembling yet strong. I struggled to put my kids through school. I've been there, and I want them to have better. A wave of voices rose around her. They were sharing, building a tapestry of hope, of struggles transformed into strength. Around her, the crowd began to move. It felt contagious. Sarah felt the warmth of their spirits intertwine, and she could almost hear the heartbeat of unity in the room. Together they were morphing into something far bigger than she could have imagined, a community ready to rise. But just as Sarah began to relish the swell of camaraderie, the lights flickered once, twice, like fate teasing them. The uncertainty had returned, and she could sense the shadows creeping in. What do we do if the lights go out? Mark suddenly asked. What if all this energy goes dark? Her heart sank for a moment. But then, she took a deep breath. We shine brighter. Together. As the crowd cheered, their voices blending into a hopeful chorus, Sarah's mind buzzed with fresh ideas, a plan starting to brew. But somewhere in the mix, that flicker of doubt still lingered. How far could they really take this? What challenges awaited them down the line? With resolve, Sarah turned to the crowd, ready to embrace what was next, but a shadow loomed in her heart, a question unanswered, the tide still uncertain. What would the future hold for them all? The energy in the room crackled like a live wire, but beneath the heartwarming surge of community, doubt simmered among them. Sarah could feel it, not just in her own heart but reflected in the faces surrounding her. They were all vulnerable, ready to open up, yet the flickering lights felt ominous, as if a trial lay ahead. Let us keep going. She called out, enthusiasm pouring from her like a dam breaking. What else do you want to share? A young woman near the front, her hands clasped tightly, stood up again. I've been struggling with my mental health, she said, her voice quaking yet clear. I feel trapped in a cycle, and sometimes I think no one understands. A supportive murmur swept across the crowd. Sarah's heart ached for her. She saw the silent battles everyone faced. You're not alone, Sarah replied gently. Your story is important. Sharing makes us stronger. One by one, stories unfolded like petals in bloom. A father spoke about losing his job and how he fought to keep his family afloat. Another neighbor shared a moment when she almost gave up on her dreams but found strength in community support. As Sarah listened, a fire ignited in her chest. Each tale was like an ember, bonding them, reassuring them. She felt the room pulse with hope, overcoming fear. But was it enough? Mark interjected, a furrow creasing his brow. This is great, but what if everyone gets discouraged when they realize how hard the journey is? What if it's not enough to just share? Take a breath, she thought, wrapping her hands around the lectern for stability. Sharing is the first step to healing. But we can create actionable plans too. Let us turn these stories into a framework for support. A soft-spoken older woman in the back raised her hand. Can we start small? Like community workshops? We could help each other with resumes, interview skills. Yes. Sarah exclaimed, the idea blossoming like spring flowers. What if we set weekly meetups to share tips and encouragement? We can learn from one another, empower each other. The idea spread like wildfire. Another person shouted, what about mentorship? Pairing older generations with young people. Yes. Yes. We can coach each other, grow together. Sarah's heart raced as she saw the gears turning in their minds. They weren't merely telling stories, they were ready to build, to act, to forge bonds that could weather any storm, but doubt still hung heavy in the air, creeping back in little by little. Mark's measuring look reminded her of the risks. But what happens if we fail? He questioned again, the weight of uncertainty in his voice. We formulate. Sarah said, feeling the urgency. We adapt. And we remember it's not failure, it's a lesson. Every hurdle will bring us closer. As the crowd began sharing even more ideas, Sarah felt the excitement swell. They were crafting a plan, a movement fueled by hope. Hands raised high, voices overlapping in anticipation. A woman suddenly gasped, pointing to the flickering lights again. They're going out. What if? A hush fell over the crowd. The looming question hung heavy in the air, punctuated by gasps of concern. Sarah steadied herself, heart pounding. Then we turn to one another, she affirmed, voice strong but tender, and we rise together in the dark. Around her, heads nodded with resolve. But as the lights finally blinked out, plunging them into half-darkness, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that pricked at the edges of her mind. What if this darkness overwhelmed them? What if their resolve faded like the light? Could they really stand united and fight against the shadows that loomed not just in the room, but in their lives? And in that moment of uncertainty, a spark of determination ignited in Sarah. She couldn't let fear overshadow them now. As she took a deep breath, she felt a burgeoning clarity, a solution ready to emerge. Let us find our way together, she called out, and the voices rallied around her, but could they harness the strength they needed before the real storm hit? The answer lay just beyond the shadows, and Sarah could hardly wait to discover it. The room was draped in darkness, a thick blanket that muted the buzz of excitement. Sarah felt a wave of quiet settle over the crowd. It was both terrifying and oddly comforting. In that moment of stillness, uncertainty became palpable, wrapping like a cocoon around them. Then, a voice pierced the silence. It was the young woman who had spoken about her mental health struggles, her tone tracing an arch of raw courage. This isn't the first time I've faced the dark, she admitted. There were nights when I thought I couldn't see my way out, but I know it's possible. In the gloom, Sarah could see the emotion etched across the faces of the audience, some reflecting fear, others igniting with hope. If you can find a way through, Sarah replied, the warmth of her voice reaching out like a lifeline, so can we all. We'll help each other navigate this darkness. The flickering candles on the table cast eerie shapes on the walls. As one of the older men, Jim, adjusted his glasses, his voice trembled when he spoke. I lost my wife last year. Darkness can feel infinite, trust me. But it was when I leaned on my neighbors that I found light again. A ripple of understanding passed through the crowd. Connections forged in shared experiences were the whispered threads binding them, creating a fabric of resilience. A hesitant hand rose in the dim light. It was a teenager, barely old enough to be considered an adult. Can we make it personal? She asked, voice shy yet determined. Can we have a place to connect with someone, to share these moments when it feels too heavy? Yes. Sarah felt a rush of confidence swell within her. A buddy system. A safe space for us to talk without judgment. We'll form these pairs and create a chain of trust. More voices chimed in, ignited by the fresh idea. We could call it Light in the Dark, another person suggested, the name sparking hope throughout the room. But Mark couldn't help but voice a concern that tugged at Sarah's heart. What happens when life gets overwhelming, and it feels like there are no answers? We keep showing up. Sarah exclaimed, taking a step forward in the darkness. When one of us falters, the others carry them. We'll be the light for each other, no matter how dim the situation feels. The energy shifted again, rising like steam after a storm. Suddenly, a few of the candles flickered back to life, illuminating smiles and faces once shrouded in doubt. Hope burned brightly among them, stoking the fire Sarah felt in her chest. But just as they collectively began to envision their path, the light sputtered again, throwing them into deeper shadows. Gasps resonated in the air, suddenly swirling into whispers of doubt. What if? What if this isn't enough? A voice dripped with anxiety, cutting through the collective excitement, chilling Sarah. She took a moment, focused on her breathing, grounding herself. What if it is? She countered, the melody of hope threading through her words. What if our collective stories give us strength? Each whisper of fear can be met with the courage of our community. We are not here to conquer the darkness alone. That's when a soft glow emerged from the gathered mass. People moved toward one another, reaching out, touching shoulders, holding hands. It was a human connection, tangible and palpable, pushing back against the quiet menace of despair. But in her heart of hearts, Sarah couldn't shake the worry gnawing at her. Were they truly ready? Could they withstand all the hurdles that lay ahead? As they held each other close, warmth and strength intertwined, Sarah realized they were edging close to something transformative. She felt as if they stood on the brink of an uncharted future, trembling with uncertainty yet pulsing with untapped potential. What awaited them beyond this moment of unity? Would their newfound connections withstand the upcoming trials, or would they, like the lights, flicker out when tested? The answers waited just out of reach, beckoning them to take the leap together. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. As the last echo of Sarah's words hung in the air, the flicker of the candles offered a fragile sense of security. She scanned the faces around her, searching for glimmers of hope among anxious expressions. It was a mixture of determination and fear, and she understood them all too well. Maybe we should all share our stories, Jim suggested, his voice warm but laced with vulnerability. It might help us to see we're not alone. A few heads nodded, and Sarah felt a flicker of excitement. What had started as a quiet gathering had transformed into a spark of community. Yeah, why not? She encouraged. Let us open up. Who wants to go first? Silence fell over the crowd, the weight of shared uncertainties sitting uncomfortably. Then, the teen from earlier cleared her throat. I've struggled with depression for a while. I feel so alone sometimes, even in a room full of people. Her admission wrenched at Sarah's heart. The bravery it took to speak those words was monumental. The girl continued, but when I heard people talk today, I felt a tiny bit of hope. Like, if they can face their darkness, maybe I can too. The room seemed to lean in closer to her. Thank you for sharing, Mark said softly, his eyes shining with empathy. It's okay to feel like that. We all have battles nobody sees. A wave of shared stories began to unfold. Each person spoke, revealing their hidden struggles. A single mother confessed how overwhelming it felt to juggle work and parenting without help. An older woman recalled the sting of losing her job and how it had chipped away at her confidence. Each voice wove together, creating a tapestry of struggles that mirrored the complexities of human life. The atmosphere shifted. It felt lighter, yet profoundly heavy with the weight of honesty. Laughter erupted from Jim as he shared a mishap from his many years of marriage, reminding everyone that life had its silly moments amid the storm. The laughter rippled through the room like a fresh breeze. See? Sarah interjected. That's what we need. Honesty, laughter, and support. We're all in this together. As each story unfolded, Sarah felt the warmth in her chest grow. These experiences were like stars in the night sky, bright, shining, and beautiful in their own ways. But beneath the surface, a current of anxiety began to stir again. What if these moments of connection didn't sustain? What if the darkness returned, threatening to swallow them whole? The nagging fear clawed at her. Then a voice broke through her thoughts. But what happens when we feel weak again? Will this group still be here? A wave of quiet skepticism washed over them, the spark of energy dimming slightly. Sarah took a step forward, her heart racing. That's the point. We need each other. We're not just here for the good times. It's the messiness that binds us tighter. Her words rang out in assertion, demanding attention. Let us create a pact. If anyone is struggling, even if we don't know how to help, we'll just show up. That's half the battle. Nods of agreement spread through the room, murmurs of yes. Rising, chasing the shadows away. The solidarity felt electric, but Sarah knew that words were only the beginning. How would they hold themselves accountable? Was this community truly ready to embrace the chaos of life, bright and dark? As the candles flickered once more, illuminating their faces with warmth and courage, she felt the stirring of something profound. What if they could truly support one another? What if their bonds could withstand the darkest of times? The challenge loomed ahead, ripe with potential, and just then, the door creaked open, a draft sweeping in, accompanied by an unexpected identity. The figure silhouetted against the dim light held a presence that demanded their attention. Everyone turned to face the intrusion, curiosity and trepidation etched across their faces. Who stood before them? Did this new arrival carry a story of hope, or would it dissolve their moment of unity? The figure stepped into the room, breaking the delicate moment they had just created. It was a man with an air of both urgency and calmness about him. His eyes scanned the group, taking in the vulnerability of their shared space. He wore a simple jacket, slightly worn at the edges, but it was clear he carried more than just belongings. It felt as if he carried the weight of his own unspoken story. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice low but steady. "I heard voices and, well, I felt drawn here." A silence fell over them, thick with curiosity. The man shifted his stance, seemingly unsure yet committed to addressing the circle of faces in front of him. "My name is Lucas. I've seen a lot of darkness, just like you. And I hope I can help." He took a deep breath and began to share. "I've been where many of you are now. I lost everything: my job, my family. I was left with nothing but my thoughts and too much time to revisit past mistakes." As he spoke, Sarah couldn't help but feel a connection rising inside her. Each word felt like a thread pulling them closer to him. The flickering candlelight caught the glistening of tears in his eyes, but there was a fire behind his grief, a determination. "I hit rock bottom and thought I'd never climb out," he continued, his tone growing stronger. "But it was that despair that led me to reach out. I started talking to people, sharing my story. The more I opened up, the more I realized I wasn't alone. It's what brought me here tonight." As he glanced around the room, it was clear he was searching for something in their faces, perhaps understanding or unbreakable solidarity. "It's scary to admit we're struggling," he said. "But there's a kind of magic in vulnerability. You'll find your strength in each other." A ripple of courage began to spread as Lucas's story seeped into the hearts around him. Sarah felt her chest swell with emotion. Just moments ago, they were uncertain, trapped in their own battles. But Lucas showed them a glimpse of what they could become together, a confluence of strength rising out of shared experiences. "Thank you for sharing that," Mark said, his voice filled with warmth. "It takes guts to stand up like that." Lucas nodded, his expression softening. "I believe in the messiness. I believe that every one of us, regardless of what we carry, can connect to love, healing, and redemption. It's the stories we tell ourselves that can either weigh us down or lift us. And when we share, we can rewrite our narratives." Encouraged by his words, people in the group began to speak once more. Sarah sensed a shift, a deeper connection forming. They spoke not only of pain but also of small victories, glimmers of hope, but beneath that connection, an unsettling realization hovered. Sarah had hoped their pact would create a safety net, yet she felt knots in her stomach. Would they be able to truly carry each other's burdens? As the conversation swirled with new energy, the door creaked again. A shadow loomed behind Lucas, a familiar face stepping into the light. It was someone Sarah had never expected to see again, someone who held the power to shake the ground beneath their fragile unity. What would this new presence bring? Would it fracture their hard-won bonds or deepen them in ways they couldn't yet imagine? The tension crackled in the air, and Sarah's heart raced as she faced the unexpected. When Sarah saw who emerged from the shadows, her breath caught in her throat, a blend of shock and disbelief. It was her old mentor, Mrs. Jensen, the very woman who had inspired her to become a teacher in the first place. Time had aged her, yet the spark in her eyes remained unchanged. "Sarah," Mrs. Jensen spoke, her voice steady yet warm, pulling them all back from the brink of uncertainty. "I've been listening. I'm proud of what you've all accomplished here tonight. You're building something beautiful." In that moment, a sense of calm washed over the room. Sarah felt the heaviness lift just a little, as if Mrs. Jensen's presence wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. "What you're doing is important," Mrs. Jensen continued, stepping further into the light. "You're creating a community, a safe haven for each other. I've seen too many kids, many of the same faces I taught, fall through the cracks. They need this place you're dreaming about." "Thank you for believing in us," Sarah replied, her voice shaking slightly with emotion. "But can you help us? We're trying to fight for hope, to inspire change. But it's hard to know if we're on the right path." Mrs. Jensen positioned herself at the front, her presence commanding yet nurturing. "Of course I can help," she exclaimed. "I brought resources, ideas on running community workshops and building connections. We'll gather stories and data. Let us create a plan together." A cheer erupted from the crowd. Her presence felt like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. "Together, we'll make your vision a reality," Mrs. Jensen said, her eyes sparkling. "This was never about your singular dream, Sarah. It's about us." The crowd buzzed, excitement swelling like the tide. Discussions sprang up about how they could utilize knowledge, skills, and network within their own experiences. Mark eyed Sarah, a flicker of respect passing between them. Could he finally see the power of community? "Mrs. Jensen, where do we even begin?" a mother questioned, vulnerability lining her features as she spoke. "We start with trust in this group, in each other," Mrs. Jensen replied with conviction. "We'll come together each week, share our stories, pool our resources, and turn them into actionable support." An air of determination filled the room, brightening the dim corners. Yet in Sarah's mind lingered the shadow of doubt. The flickering lights felt symbolic, akin to her fear of failure, missteps that could undo them all. Each time they overcome an obstacle, new uncertainties cropped up. Would they be able to hold their fragile bonds as tight as they envisioned? They broke into small groups, animated discussions erupting everywhere. In that moment, Sarah felt less like a solitary figure and more like a thread woven into the fabric of the community. They rallied around one another, crafting plans with joy, laughter, and the occasional tear. Each idea was met with more enthusiasm, growing into something powerful and united, but then, just as energy peaked, a stranger slipped quietly through the door. Silence fell, with everyone turning to face this unexpected visitor again. The newcomer looked unnerved yet calm, with an air of honesty that caught their attention. "I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice soft yet firm. "I saw the lights were on, and I thought perhaps I could share my story." Everyone drew in a breath, instinctively sensing the weight of this moment. They silently encouraged him with nods. "I'm Danny," he said quietly, looking down as he shifted his weight nervously. "I lost my job 6 months ago and I slipped into darkness. I drank too much, hurt my family." He looked up, meeting their eyes. "But I'm trying to fix things. I want to learn how to be better, not just for me, but for my kids." Sarah's heart tightened. Vulnerability wrapped around them like a binding spell, anchoring them together in shared empathy. "Thank you for sharing that, Danny," she replied, stepping toward him. "That takes courage. And it's why we're here, to support each other through ups and downs. We've all faced our struggles." A tremor of understanding rippled through the group. They weren't alone. They stood together beneath flickering lights, battling personal storms with shared strength. For Sarah, a realization broke through the fog spinning in her mind. It wasn't about perfection or guaranteed success, it was about the people in that room. The stories, the struggle, the support. This was power. Perhaps the shadows of doubt wouldn't disappear entirely, but confronting them together breathed life into hope and possibility. As their discussions flourished, Sarah felt the weight of her earlier fears begin to lighten. They were forging a path, a vibrant community rising from the ashes of darkness. In that moment, Sarah looked around the faces of the young and old, the weary and hopeful, united in purpose. Together, they would move forward, whatever challenges lay ahead. With renewed clarity, she resolved to embrace the journey ahead, ready to face whatever came their way as one. She turned to Mrs. Jensen, whose warm smile reached her. "Can we really do this, Mrs. Jensen?" "Absolutely, Sarah. This is only the beginning," she said with confidence, her tone wrapping around Sarah like a warm hug. "Let us step into the light." The auditorium hummed with excitement, charged with ambition and possibility. The flickering lights might be fragile, but together, they held the potential to illuminate the path forward, casting away shadows and fostering a spirit of resilience. And as they stood on the precipice of something extraordinary, Sarah knew there was no turning back. This was their chance to build not just a community center, but a thriving family rooted in love, struggle, and determination. It was time to shine, time to rise together. Now more than ever, they needed to take the leap into the unknown, ready to embrace the journey of hope that awaited them. So what now? The answer was simple. They would simply keep moving forward, together. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the incredible stories to come. Leave a like now to keep the magic alive in the algorithm, comment below with your reactions and feelings about this transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this community spirit. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second. Come join us in this journey of hope and resilience.